And you even have the backdrop, Ms. Schmidt. Now you can't beat that. Dr. Schumacher, you got to wake up over there in your office in between patients.
Yeah, I got plenty of junk in the background.
All right, and it looks like it is almost 12 o'clock. It's great that there are up, and Mr. Tatum just arrived.
And I still have 1 minute on my clock. Thank you. What's that? Okay. Meeting will now be called to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I just am not used to these noon timetables. But we're here, ready to start on time. Hopefully we can go through this pretty quickly. Got a full day. It's weird to be at work and leave to come to a school board meeting and have to go back to work to finish up my day, but such as it is. So we will begin our time this afternoon with the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, no, we'll begin with the roll call.
Present. Dr. Break. Here. Mrs. Schmidt.
Present.
Dr. Schumacher.
I'm here.
And Mr. Tatum.
I'm here also.
All right.
Thank you. We are all here. So now we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance on our agenda. Do we have a guest? It would be great if we had a guest that would be willing to.
Our new employee, Mr. Hernandez, Highland Park High graduate. Can you come stand right now next to me?
Yeah. Sure.
He is our new communications team member, and he's doing a phenomenal job. And Mr. Hernandez and his 8 siblings went through Topeka Public Schools. All right.
Yeah.
All right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, and welcome to the team.
Welcome to the team, Mr. Hernandez. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda.
I move the board adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Schumacher. Do we have a second? Mr. Mignot seconds. Any further discussion? All right, not seeing any or hearing any, we will go to a vote. Thank you, everyone. The next item on our agenda is public communications. Ms. Lister, do we have anyone to address the board today? We do not. Okay. So we'll move past that item and go on to disposition of business by consent.
I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign the special project and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Schumacher. Do we have a second? Mrs. Boley seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, not seeing or hearing any, we will go to a vote.
All votes are in, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everyone. All right. So that appears to take us to our main topic of discussion for today, which is the revenue neutral rate for the 2024 and 2025 budget.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the new meeting here late in June. That allows us to dispense of the final round of expenses, empty our buckets, and get ready for FY25. So thank you for accommodating that. The only other thing I wanted to chat about briefly today was revenue neutral. All of the board has experienced some revenue neutral discussion the last 3 years. Our finance team last week talked about revenue neutral extensively at our last finance council meeting last Thursday. And I just wanted to kind of bring up the importance of the revenue neutral rate and the amount of emphasis that we put on it, and that there's a timeline. And today, I think the most important thing is to talk about the timeline for revenue neutral, because those are critical. I'm not going to ask you to vote on anything. We don't need to decide anything today, but just know and understand at some point we will be bringing back to the board a mill levy rate that we would recommend as a finance team, as leadership, to adopt in the 24-25 budget. So with that, there are multiple steps that we have to hit by statute. I kind of set in front of everybody just a history of mill levies and taxes collected. So this revenue neutral business kind of came on board legislatively about 3 or 4 years ago. And essentially, as a reminder is, if a entity that levies tax, right, if you collect $1 more than you did the year before, right, you have to go through this process. Or if you anticipate collecting $1 more, notifying the constituents in your taxing entity. And if you don't notify them and you collect more money, guess what you get to do? You get to pay them back. So we don't want to be in that position. Even if we don't collect more money, it's wise to review this revenue neutral. And I think pass a resolution that, there's the real potential for the board to exceed that revenue neutral. The document that I shared with everybody, I think every year, I make this statement that we are sensitive to both sides of this issue, the taxpayer as well as the district, right? We need to set a budget authority where we can serve our students and cover our operating costs reasonably. If you look at that table, the first row, the mill levies, you could see starting in 2020, moving forward to the left to 2025, we've had a pretty steady progression of declining mill rates. And I do think that really demonstrates the district's concern, right? That we understand that property values are particularly the last 3 or 4 years, have constantly been increasing at a rate that we haven't seen in probably 20 years in the housing market. So the revenue neutral rate is critical in funding. There's 5 areas we levy, right? The general fund, which is a statewide levy. We don't have an option on what that is. That's the 20 mills, right? And then the LOB, we can levy a portion of our general fund. And those two combined really are our operating dollars. Those are what we use to pay our teachers, our staff, pay the light bill. We do fund transfers out to help support and fund those special programs, bilingual, parents as teachers, special education, career tech ed, right? So those mill levy funds, capital outlay, we levy a mill in capital outlay so we can keep our buildings in good repair. The boilers and air conditioning units operating, the roofs not leaking, right? That's what that capital outlay fund is for. Our bond and interest fund, right? We've got to levy that because we got to pay back that $143 million worth of bonds that we issued, borrowed in 2014 to do all the amazing things that we did with that bond issue. And we did some amazing things. But with that, there's a real timeline with this revenue neutral. We have passed a revenue neutral resolution for the prior 3 years. We're going to do it again this year, or I'm pretty sure I'm going to make the recommendation. We're going to do that. On the July 11th board meeting, I'll request to be back in front of you with the revenue neutral rate. that we plan on adopting. You see in the 24-25, the very far left column, R&R. The county has sent us their estimates for valuations and what our revenue neutral mill levy looks like. And that revenue neutral mill levy, according to the county's calculations, should be around 42.311. You can see our actual mill levy, certified mill levy, was 44.54, which was just exactly or just about exactly what we adopted last year. I can promise you that I don't think anything at that 42.3 or below would adequately fund our LOB or capital outlay at the level that I think we're going to want to recommend. So I would at this point think that we'll be somewhere between that 42.3 and that 44.5 when we come back to you on July 11th. We're going to make that recommendation to you. We can have conversations around that, and then ask for your approval to send that on to the county clerk. Nobody will need to sign that. Our board clerk and myself are required to sign that intent. So it is an intent letting the county clerk know Topeka Public Schools as a taxing entity anticipates exceeding what they had calculated for us on that revenue neutral. They have to have that by the 20th of July. In the statute, our county clerk has to have our intent on or before July 20th. The county clerk then is obligated by statute to notify all of the taxpayers in a taxing entity of all the governmental units that are going to be exceeding or anticipated exceeding their revenue neutral rate. So you'll get a letter in the mail if you live in Topeka, right? The last 4 years, you got one. If you're a homeowner here, I got mine. And it kind of explains all the entities, whether it's Topeka Public Schools or, in Shawnee County, that have put an intent in. After that, we will come back with continuation of working on that budget. Right now, looking at that August 22nd board meeting, the second meeting in August, we'll bring to you hopefully our final recommendations for budget authority for all of our state aid funds. And we'll ask for the board's permission to publish, right? We have to publish our Code 99 or what we anticipate adopting for our budgets, as well as the revenue neutral. Because if you remember from the last several years, the revenue neutral has to be a separate hearing, has to be voted on separately, has to be done by roll call vote, and you get assigned that document on the night we adopt our budget, which we would look forward to September 5th right now as the board that we would look at holding our hearings at this point. We'll hold that revenue neutral hearing first, pending any discussions or protests. Then we would move forward and make our recommendation to adopt the budget as presented to you on September 5th. And then we are required by statute as a district to have those in the hands of KSDE to get our certifications and Shawnee County by the 20th of September. That's kind of the timeline. We're going to come back that first meeting in July. I'm working a split shift too today, Mr. Tatum. I'm out at the Kansas Department of Ed budget workshop at Shawnee Heights. Learning lots. What I learned about the last minute legislation here a week ago even convinces me more and more how important and critical it is for this revenue neutral, for us to pay close attention to revenue neutral and make solid recommendations. Again, keeping in mind that our taxpayers are part of our team, right? Because without them, none of this happens. But again, my promise is to bring back something that's fair to the district and fair to our taxpayers. That's our intent. So,
are there questions for Mr. Minke? Because that does conclude the discussion portion of explaining the budget process for those that are listening and the revenue neutral. Any questions for Mr. Minke?
Any questions? Dr. Bonebrain.
If he might put the detail on, we're no longer getting the money per student for the highest population in the last 2 years, but it's an average of 2
Yeah,
years.
that's the piece I just alluded to, the last minute pass of the budget. So, and they really talked about that this morning. So, prior law, we were able to use for our foundation aid the highest of the preceding 2 years. And this year in SB 387 and as finalized a week ago, that law changes from the highest of the prior 2 years for your foundation aid to the highest of current year or the immediately preceding year. With the exception of this year, they're allowing you to use the highest of the current, highest of the preceding, or an average of the preceding two. The problem is, and there was a show of hands in the room, if you historically have been declining enrollment, and there are many, many school districts in the state of Kansas that have been declining enrollment, there's going to be a group of folks that, and we are thankful for the foundation aid increase, right, from $5,088 to $5,300, almost $5,400, a 5.7% increase. But we won't experience that in overall general fund dollars. I promise you, we won't get a close to 6% increase because we're not going to be able to. Our highest count would have been our prior second, but now we've got to use an average. Well, from 2022 to September 23, right? Those two counts, there's a difference of about 360 kids. So there's a difference between being able to use 11,840 for your foundation aid and using an average of 11,840 plus 11,600 divided by 2, right? In our case, in state foundation aid, it's going to cost about $1.4 million versus being able to go back and use that 11,840 again. So, and I'm glad you asked that question, Dr. Bonebrake, because again, I think it places emphasis on you really need to look at this revenue neutral because you're going to want to, I think, in my opinion, a district like Topeka Public Schools, we're going to want to leverage and continue leveraging our LOB as much as possible for those operating dollars. With that, because we all know, right, the general fund and the LOB, right, our operating dollars, they help fund because we do transfers out of those two funds into bilingual, into special education, into career tech. That's the only way they work, right? Those programs wouldn't work if we just transferred state aid for special education into the special education fund. It would be short $20 million, right? Part of that new SPED money comes with a requirement to transfer dollars out of the LOB, right? There's a requirement to transfer. Now, listen, my prediction would be that we far exceed already. Topeka Public Schools probably far exceeds already our transfer out of the LOB into SPED than what our requirement will be, our calculated requirement based off of this law. But for me, it does solidify the importance that, we're going to have to dig in and fight for these operating dollars the next couple of years, I think, unless we have a real reflection point in housing prices. And that probably wouldn't be a bad thing either if folks had stopped paying, 35% over the list price of a house. But
so in essence, the new law negates the increase that we received because of the.
Not completely, but it
to a large
softens it.
degree,
Yeah.
it softens it. So
Yep.
thank you for asking that question, Dr. Bonebrake. Other questions that you have?
Any other questions from board members?
That concludes the items we have for the purpose of discussion. We turn it back over to you, President Tatum.
Okay, thank you so much. And just to clarify, there's nothing else that is needed from the board at this time with this matter. Okay, thank you. All right, we anticipated this would be a short meeting, and that's exactly what we're getting today. So I do want to leave some room for board member comments for those of us that want to make them. I'll start myself. Just wanted to call attention to the fact that in the absence of Mrs. Stewart Campbell, there are some committee assignments that have now come open, roles that she was assigned to, that are going to need to have other board members fill those gaps. And in some cases, it may be whoever eventually comes on board to take her place. But for others, there are existing board members that can be plugged into those positions. And one of those is the Head Start Policy Committee. And so I have assigned Mrs. Boley to retake that role that she was in previously. And then if anybody else wants to do some committee reassignments, I'm happy to entertain that. I've not heard of anyone else so far that says, hey, I really want to shift to doing that instead of what I'm doing now, but certainly want to be open to those kinds of requests and reflections. The other thing, so to be clear, I'll put together the list for Miss Lister and get it to her with the updates on it. That's really all that I have. Think we'll go to our colleagues on screen. Dr. Schumacher, do you have anything?
I had technology committee on Monday and personnel on Tuesday, but I wasn't really prepared to present anything, so I'll hold on to that for our July 11th meeting.
Sounds good. Mrs. Schmidt.
I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Munoz.
Nothing I'll wait till our next board meeting, but I just hope everybody's having a good summer and enjoying the rest and relaxation.
All right, Mrs. Boley.
I'll save my committee meeting reports till then, but I wanted to thank Vic Miller for the letter that he has left with all the board members. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll miss you.
All right, and Dr. Bonebreak.
As you know, we extended the school year to elementary schools for June. They've got 2 more days. So I've been to Scott and Ross, and I'd have to say that they are thriving. The students are effervescent. Teachers are somewhat bubbly as well. They're excited about it. They're having fun. They're entertained. And Dr. Mejia, unbeknownst to me, had actually kind of started a summer enrichment program at 4 or 5 other schools in addition. She just on top of things. But I think it's going well. It'll be interesting to see how our testing goes after this, before school.
Yes, it will. Okay, Mrs. Boley, have something else?
Well, I wanted to give credit also to Mrs. Wallace for the summer school programming. I know that she carries a load there, but also Miss Lister has a birthday tomorrow, so don't forget to wish her happy birthday.
Happy
Because
birthday,
isn't
Mrs.
she
Lister.
blessed to have one more birthday? Yay!
You've earned it.
Can't hear you.
WIPW interviewed Dr. Gardner about the extended school year, as well as one of the students who was taken quite by surprise.
Oh my God. Recently? Is that a recent interview?
This morning.
Oh,
they
wow. Okay.
Dr.
interviewed-
Gray
It'll
helped
be on
arrange that today.
TV tonight. I think at the 5:30 or 6.
He just happened to be there when WWW walked in today. And so I explained that Dr. Gray and his team arranged for that to highlight the extended year. So, so we'll be excited to all see that this evening.
Fantastic.
If I may, very briefly, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Tatum, based on consensus, with that board vacancy, and Ms. Whiteman can speak to this as well, as the applications continue to come in on July the 10th is when the board clerk has will be getting the final applications and or letters of interest. And as she gets those letters of interest, July the 10th is when she will send those to the board. And the 11th, they will have 3 minutes to share their desires to be on the board. Right now, we have 2 applications or letters of interest. Excuse me. So wanted to make sure that by consensus, that's still the plan. So the very next board meeting, you should have the pleasure of meeting at least 2 and perhaps more people. If there are any changes or questions to that,
Yes.
or Mrs. Whiteman is certainly here to.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. That was my understanding of the timetable as well. Any questions or comments from board members on that? Okay, so
Right.
yeah, I think we're all agreed
Thank
on
you.
that
So
course
that's
of
the
action.
course of action we'll take. And to Mrs. Bowley's comment, I told Ms. Wallace if it came up, I think in 2017-18, she got started with summer programming and it has taken off in some incredible ways. Dr. Mejia has been a wonderful addition to continue to grow that. Thanks for stopping by both programs. Dr. Bonebrake, we appreciate you.
Okay, well, we have reached the end of this particular meeting. And so at this point, I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move the meeting adjourned.
All right, do we have a second for that? Dr. Bonebrake seconds. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, I'm seeing unanimous, I'm not seeing any opposed, see all hands raised. So the motion passes unanimously and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Hernandez, you ain't ready for anything. Call you on